that could have been the end of my tour right there for the stupid glass of champagne photo.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Odd Tandem. Today just happens to be the day that the 2025 Tour de France race route was announced, and what better opportunity than to speak about that with our guest today, Cadel Evans. Cadel has been on the podcast before, but we get to talk a little bit about the Tour de France route, his career, and what he's doing now. Yenzi, always great talking to Cadel, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely it is. He is still close to the cycling scene. He is an insider, interesting point of views, and obviously brings back memories because the Tour de France he won. My captain and my teammate Andy Schleck finished second, so we spent basically 3 weeks trying to beat Cadel, and we came up just a little short, and Cadel won the Tour. So yes, it's always good to see him again and to see him being happy and having a good place in life.
So sit back, relax, and listen to this great conversation with Cadel Evans. All right, today we have a special guest, Mr. Cadel Evans. Welcome to the Odd Tandem.
Boys, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's been a little while. Mark, I remember, what was it, a year ago I was with you guys, no, just a pleasure to be here. And tell me, what's been going on in the world? Update me. I know there was a big race presented today. Update me.
Yeah, that's, everything works out here on the Odd Tandem. You know, we have an ex-Tour de France champion on the day that the Tour de France 2025 parcours is announced. So I have a question about that because I was never invited to one of those things, or maybe I was and I was on the other side of the world, but I was never there. So what actually goes on at the Tour de France presentation? Like, how long are you there? Is it, just tell us about it. What is it like?
Yeah, the first thing why a lot of riders, I noticed, like past winners weren't present there. It's first of all, it's in the middle of the holidays, or the off season, and riders off season is shorter and shorter, and they get less and less time off so to have an obligation in that short window of time where you can, if your family still recognises you and wants to welcome you home, you can go back and see them. So that's the first part of it. But I went to quite a few, especially the years I was on the podium and things, a sort of respect to the organisation. In Palais du Congrès, you have this enormous theatre. It's a huge stage, and it's a fantastically, really well presented show. And a lot of journalists there, and some team managers and things, because a lot of them sports directors and things. It's a train ride from Brussels or something for them, so it's not a big deal to get there. But I think the year after I won it, I was invited up on stage and you have a little talk with it was already Monsieur Prudhomme was the race director for most of our careers. It's a huge professional show, and this big screen, and it's they roll out each stage and show a bit of a brief on it, and from there on all the journalists are there and asking questions and getting grabs and things, and then all of a sudden everyone just goes home. So it lasts, a long-winded answer to say, you go there for about an hour, see a big show, and then you go home.
So, but there's got to be all these journalists and wanted to ask questions to the riders or former riders. Like, hey, what do you think about this stage? What do you think about the crosswinds or the Mur de Bretagne or this and that and so on? So that goes on until midnight or not?
Oh, no, because I think it's normally 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, so it's a kind of a morning thing. I would have gone there the night before. I particularly like going there when it was with BMC, because we'd go there with Andy Reese, who's unfortunately no longer with us, but we'd go out to dinner and it'd be great. And in the off season, you can go to a nice restaurant and so on and spend some, just social time with your team management. And then the next day, go to the presentation. But then sort of by about midday, people are sort of walking off out of there and going to the airport and going home because they've got holidays that they're going on or something. So it's sort of, it's a big wait and a big show and a big, a big build-up. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, where'd everyone go? And which is... like if I can say it as a personal experience, I sort of found myself on a train platform, sitting on there on my own, wondering where does everyone go or something. But certainly to be there in the show, sitting with the riders, that's pretty special, and especially when you're there with your next year's competitor or the guy you came second to or something, they're sitting in the crowd there. That's kind of a different experience.
Well, since it was only released today, we don't expect you to have dove into it and studied it at the depth that Jens and I have done it. And as I was doing that today, I was kind of laughing, Jensi. Here we are getting ready for this podcast, so we need to kind of know what the Tour de France is, right? There were years that I don't think I knew the stages of the Tour until we got to the Tour and opened up the book. Oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're doing that. Now, it's released, it's online, you can research it perfectly, everything's analyzed already for you, so we can sit here like armchair quarterbacks and give our opinion of it. So, Cadel, cliff notes of the 2025 Tour this year, right? It starts on the 5th of July and ends on July 27th. There's 2 time trials, 1 flat, 1 uphill, 7 sprint stages, 6 mountain stages, and 6 quote-unquote hilly stages, which we all know are some of the most dangerous stages out there. So all in all, it's a pretty common and classic Tour de France. And the thing I like about it the most, and this is what I want to ask you about, was it's the first time in quite a while that the entire Tour is in France, right? Like they've started in all these satellite locations, which I don't remember starting a Tour out of France except for maybe the year that it started up in Belgium and we did the prologue up there in Liège. So it was, the next day I think we were in France. But what is that first week of the Tour when you have to go to a different country and then transfer back to France like? Is that just added stress or, kind of cool?
I think the one year we had the biggest amount of stress was for the Tour start was when there was the pilot strikes, and I think the start was in Bretagne. That was the biggest amount of stress I ever had for a Tour start. But the overseas starts, my son made me realise this. I'm going to the Tour. Oh, where are you going? Oh, Copenhagen. And he's like, what? Every year it's the same thing, going to the start of a Giro, of Vuelta, or a Tour where they start overseas. But I was really I look at it as a rider. Now I look at it, of course, more as a fan and as a tour guide host. So I look at it in a much different light now. But as a rider, I was quite rational about it. Okay, that stage is crosswinds, that stage is cobbles, that stage is a chance to get some recovery, that stage is going to be important. Whether it was in Belgium, France, Luxembourg, for me, it really it didn't change that much at all for me. Like I suppose I was really rational. I just looked at the sporting aspect and left it at that.
I remember also our early tours. We didn't really had internet, so we were really relying on these books on paper, right? That's all information you had. And if on that map it shows 3 arrows, it means, oh, that's a steep uphill because it got 3 little arrows going uphill. So yeah, that really has changed. It made it a lot easier for us. The tour you won, that one was 3,320 kilometers long. This one is yours was 3,400. This year's is 3,300. It's just 100 kilometer difference. So that's more or less the same, right? You would say that doesn't change too much in the last 20 years, huh?
No, but in the last 20 years, they go about 5k an hour faster for the whole thing. So
yep.
It's going to be an even shorter tour. But no, on those things, even if the stage is 200 or 220, it's like everyone's going to be tired after 150 anyway. I was always sort of the muchest about it. Obviously, once you go 180, you have those steps, sort of 180, 200, 220, 250, 260, there where it's sort of, that makes a really big difference. But those little distances, again, I'm more looking like how fast is the short, like GC deciding stage from the start, which stage 2 is already a bit lumpy, I think, in the 2025 Tour, so the rider's got to be pretty sharp. What, the time trial's on stage 5, if I remember correctly? Here, I've got it in front of you. Why don't I... Now that we have the internet, I put my map away because I've got a chance to go for a ride tomorrow. So I pulled out the map and had a look at it because old habits die hard. And I learned how to map rides off a paper map, so it sort of stuck with me better. I still use the internet though, of course, for that. Sorry, let me get the route up. And then it's quite a short time trial. I'd look at like as a time trialist, as a GC rider, you go. All the GC riders are going to be looking to be sharp for that, especially Evenepoel. I'd be looking at training on my time trial bike, like leading up to the race. Those kinds of things would probably be the first thing I look on. Boulogne-sur-Mer might be a stage you'd have one asterisk next to for a chance of trouble, I think. Dunkirk, Valenciennes, I can't remember those roads. I'd have to ask advice on that. But then, I'd look straight to where the first block of mountains and then being really ready for those. No rest day in Pau as well. How long since that's happened?
Well, I kind of I cut it down into 3 different blocks, right? So block number 1 is 9 pretty mellow stages with 1 flat TT, and then that last stage of that 10-day block is the first big uphill mountain day, right? Then into the Pyrenees. So that first block is mostly up in the northwest corner of France, which we know can get windy. Up and down, even if it's not on the profile, its altitude meters are there. Then block number 2 is only 5 stages long. So but there's 3 uphill finishes and 1 uphill, including the uphill time trial. That's in the Pyrenees. So 10 days rest day, 5 days rest day, and then block 6 in the Alps with 6 stages with Ventoux, Super Bonnière, and La Loze, and finishing in Paris again this year after our 1-year hiatus from the Champs-Élysées to finish that awesome stage in Nice. So did you ever race a tour when there was only 1 rest day?
No, I think I was in the era still 9 riders, but 2 rest days. I don't think I ever rode a Grand Tour with only 1 rest day, actually. I rode my first Grand Tour in 2002, so...
Yeah, maybe that was... I forget the year that they changed to 2 rest days, but, that blocks it off pretty good, right? 10 days on, a rest day, some hard mountain days, another rest day after 5 more days, and then the final push to Paris. We can go into the minutia, any other time. I don't think we need to do that totally here. But the one thing that's missing, and was always one of my favorite stages, and Yenzi, you probably are with me on this one, is there's no team time trial again this year. Have we seen the end of team time trials in Grand Tours, or at least the Tour de France, Cadel?
It seems that way, doesn't it? But there's also no sort of, if I can say this, a spectacle stage like cobbles, gravel roads, or something, which I'm kind of surprised about because that seemed to have been becoming the norm in Grand Tours. But team time trials are because as from an organisation point of view, it's the TV time. So they have to be a certain distance, it has to fit in a certain time, and then also, of course, keeping the riders and the teams happy. I know the equipment sponsors are happy with team time trials. They seem popular on TV, aren't they? I'm not really up to date with the ratings, but yeah, they're becoming less and less, and yeah, it's a bit of a dying art, isn't it?
Were you a fan of the team time trial in the Tour de France? Did you like it?
When I rode with BMC, yes. When I didn't ride with BMC, no. Because I used to lose a lot of time with a team like Lotto.
But we saw another little comeback of the mountaintop uphill time trial. What do you call it in proper English? We haven't had one of them forever.
Time trial. Yeah, I suppose that's the spectacle stage, and it's on because it goes up to that one of those mountain airports, right? One of the ones on an angle, like the stage was that 2023, that spectacular stage there where Pog lost 6 minutes to Vingegaard, where they finished it really steep there. That would be I've never had the chance to be in an airplane landing on one of those, but I don't know if I'm missing out on much. That looks kind of intimidating.
Man, I mean, the Tour de France we get so excited about, but like honestly, you could probably put that on any route and it would still be classic. But I want to go back to when you won the Tour de France in 2011, right? That final day going into Paris, right? You've got the race in hand. I mean, barring any catastrophe, but I always see, guys passing around champagne. Everyone's patting each other on the back after basically going to war with each other for 3 weeks. What was that like, knowing, okay, I got to take this picture with champagne. I may have a sip of it. I'm going to accept all these accolades from my counterparts, but I'm about ready to fulfill a lifetime dream. I mean, my head would just be all over the place with, hey, I'm celebrating, but I'm not quite to the finish line yet. What was that final day like for you in 2011?
Like I mentioned before, I'm a bit rational about these things. I'm like, we celebrate when we get the yellow jersey over the line. Stay calm, stay concentrated to the line, because after, I think it was 20 years of dreaming and working or something to get to that point, I wasn't going to throw it away for a small thing. Just on the champagne thing, I always had this thing for myself. If I was going to win the Tour, I'd want to open a bottle of like Aussie beer, just to do something different. But of course, I didn't want to jinx myself, so I never bought some Aussie beer with me for that reason. Though the year that, you have to do the photo. Every year we do the photo with the champagne. You have to do it for L'Equipe and the organisation. It's a tradition. You have to do it. Can't we just get racing and get this over with? Because I want to get this jersey across the line. The year that 2011, glass of champagne in hand, you're there with the director doing chin chin, and I have a sip, and the TV motorbike in front of me crashed, like right in front of me. I had the gutter on this side, the team car on this side, and the motorbike crashed there, so I had absolutely nowhere to go, and I was holding a glass of champagne in like one hand. Fortunately, because I'm Australian, I have my brakes going the other way, so I can, with my left, grab a handful of rear brake. But like, that could have been the end of my tour right there for the stupid glass of champagne photo. I was a little bit disappointed, annoyed about that one, but let's just get this over the line. And yeah, it was, the thing for me was, like I had a couple of key moments, and you guys raced with the Schlecks, so you know them well, but I could sort of see with Andy in his body language, I think he's losing confidence in this. And then my biggest moment, I think, on Saturday evening, before going to the Champs-Élysées stage, my phone rang with a number I didn't know, and it was Andy ringing me up, and he congratulated me. And I was like, I was really taken back by it. I was just stunned, and I was impressed, stunned, and I was really, that was sort of one in those moments. And then, of course, when you cross the finish line, it's just like, oh, thank God, that was just the biggest celebration ever, which I think the clip of us hugging after the finish line was played in the halftime show in Super Bowl that following year.
Wow,
Really?
that would be big. We need to do some research on that.
Yeah, it was played in the like me, George, Quincy, Boogie, Amael, Steve Marabito. It was played at the Super Bowl show.
So you in your tour, the one you won, you had to work hard and work late into the tour. This year's Tour de France, Pogacar had it relatively early, and it looked like, okay, this is safe and it is cemented, right? So what do we expect for the 25 Tour? Will it be done stage 19, short, vicious mountain stage with a hilltop finish? Will it be decided only 2 days before the finish? Or you think already, I don't know, in the uphill time trial in the Pyrenees? Or what do you think? Early or late, or
I don't want to put a dampener.
Unpredictable? I
don't want to put a dampener on the excitement for it, but when I first looked at the info for the race route, I looked at it and I thought, oh, Pog's going to win 8 stages. I'm
sure that would be a lot.
I'm sure that's not going to happen. Well, I'm pretty sure that's. I'll never say that. I'm sure that's not going to happen with him. It's ridiculous. But I'm really hoping that, like, Vingegaard. I think. What was great to see in Vingegaard in 2024 was it was nice to see some humility from him, and the fact that he went out and like showed that towards Pog as well. But I hope a healthy, concentrated Vingegaard, a healthy, concentrated Evenepoel are going to be able to present really different competitors towards Pogacar. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure Pogacar's. I can't imagine he's going to ride the Giro Tour again. I'd imagine in his case, if he wanted to do 2, he could do Giro Vuelta as a lead into Rwanda World Championships or something would be my recommendation. But I think we're going to see Yeah, hopefully the guy stays safe. And after what happened to them, Evenepoel and Vingegaard in 2024, I'm sure they're going to have a slightly different approach to the season and staying safe and being there. And I think we're going to have a 3-4 pronged attack from all sides. I hope that the monkey is off Rogler's back, and that he can also be in the mix as well, because that'd be great. And after what Hans Grohe of Red Bull and all this is, sort of, they went in with sort of big, huge ambitions in the 2024 tour, and they put everything on Rogler, and next thing he wasn't there.
You think maybe Primoz is getting just as 1 year too old? His body, I mean, these other young kids are like at their prime, and Primoz has a lot more experience, maturity, and all that. But do you maybe think it's just this 1 more year, or 1 year too old? I don't know. I love the man, and he won so many races. He's a classy rider, but you think he still has a chance to come up against the 3 young guns?
Well, I think the young guns, well, what decade are we talking about? They're 5 years before their prime, but they've already run a couple of Grand Tours each. Certainly, everything's changed. So Rogler at his age is already way too old if you look at the new, what the prime age is as a Grand Tour rider. But I agree with you where I like same Rogler. I love the guy. I met him a few years ago before he was sort of a known rider, and super nice guy, great, fantastic bike rider. But that as once you go after sort of 30, 32, that window of opportunity is really closing, because your recovery is really compromised. And I remember I think I was 32 myself, and I think it was a quote from Eddie Merckx or something. Oh, yeah, whatever. But one thing goes wrong, and then you never come back. When I started back, it's like 35, health problems and so on. But all of a sudden, my recovery just was nowhere what it was before, and I think that's unfortunately, just being honest about it, that's the case. I hope that Roglic can prove me wrong, but I think his biggest thing is he's just been really unlucky at the Tour, where he crashed this year. Like, he was nowhere near the gravel sections in the stage. He crashed in things, but it was a really unlucky crash. There was a crash on the other side of the road, on the other side of a traffic island, and he got taken out. It's kind of like, how does that even happen? But that happened to him, and that was the start of the end of his 2024 Tour de France campaign. I think Red Bull have made a bit of a strategic error in sort of holding my compatriot Jai Hindley back. Of course, I've got a little bit of bias, but also a great guy. But always better to have one more up there if you can, at least for the first half of the tour, until it's clear that you've got a designated leader. But I think they made a mistake in like having him slip out of GC so early. Jai Hindley come out of GC so early.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about compatriots, your boy Ben O'Connor had one heck of a year this year, and he's switching teams. Tell us a little bit about your opinion of how his season went with such an amazing, 4th place in the Giro, 2nd place in the Vuelta, 2nd place in the World Championship road race. I mean, pretty impressive stuff, right?
Incredible, especially the Worlds for me. That was the one that really, because he's a GC rider, and we expect things from him as in a 3-week race. When he was called up to go to the Olympics, the guys who rode with him there, it's like, this guy isn't a one-day race rider, and then he comes out and gets 2nd at the Worlds. Obviously, the Worlds being, especially this year, I think it was being just such a hard race that it was just staying there and being patient in the end, which got him his result. But still, he did it, and probably was one of the hardest World Championships for a long time. Amazing season, amazing turnaround. I think what Ben can do on this team, on paper, I would say what he can do this year with this team, with Alula and being on an Aussie team, normally that will lift him. They'll believe in him more. They'll support him more. He should be able to do more. One thing with all of his best results, his 4th place at the Tour de France. I think he's 2nd place at the World Championships as well. He's sort of come in as an underrated rider. He hasn't come in with when he's a watched rider, whereas when he went back to the Tour de France after his 4th place, he got into 4th place from coming from a breakaway, when I think a lot of his competitors really underestimated him, whereas now he won't have that advantage of being underestimated by his competitors. I think that might work against him. unfortunately.
And just out of the blue, your opinion, will Cavendish race another Tour de France? I mean, he says he's retired, but he, he said it already somewhat before, and then we didn't know if he has a contract or not. And I don't know, man. I don't trust this whole thing yet. Plus, with the first relatively, 9 stages, relatively flat or easy for him, he could win. And I said, do you think it's 50-50, or you go, nah, that's bullshit, no chance.
When you put it
Kev
like
is
that,
done.
you shift my opinion. When we were speaking before we were recording, it's like, Cav, he can't sit still. Like he's probably going to be out riding his bike every day anyway, because he doesn't know differently. He'll be like, I'll just go and do the race. But I suppose there is some better opportunities for him this year. And Cav, it's I sort of want to say this on TV, but when you're doing live TV, as you know, it's sometimes a bit difficult. But it's kind of like a Hollywood script. He sort of just convinces us, the viewers or the fans, that it's impossible, that he can't do it, that he won't do it. I'm thinking of the image of him from him riding into Emilia-Romagna in the heat. He's got two teammates with him. He's 10 minutes behind. It's like, this guy isn't even going to make it through the first week, never alone win a start at 35th stage of the Tour. Sure enough, what does he do? Everyone's just completely convinced that he can't do it, and then he turns around and does it. Maybe he's just going to stick with that Hollywood script thing, whether he does it intentionally or not. I don't think he does it intentionally. If we all say no, he won't, he's done, he can't do it, well, he'll probably turn everything around and go again. With some, I'll just be a bit vague on this info, but I know Astana did turn down a good sprinter that they could have had in their team just recently. So maybe that could be a slight indicator.
Well, I got to spend some time with Mark last week here at the Hincapie Gran Fondo. Cadel, you've been here before. You know what it's like.
Wish I could have been there this year.
It was a little bit different this year because of the hurricane that blew through. We had to adjust the course a little bit. And I was sitting there at lunch with Mark and George, Christian, Brad, and we were just kind of, chewing the fat a little bit. And I wasn't 100% convinced that he's not going to race next year. He's all over the place. He's super busy until the end of the year, but I was trying to pull that out of him. Like, so this is it, right? Because you're absolutely right, Jens, and you're absolutely right, Cadel. Like, you just never know with him, and he could just flip the script and be racing next year, and, it'd be great to see. But you mentioned about Ben. Ben's changing teams. We just read today that Demi Vollering is changing teams. Cadel, we were teammates. You started your career at Seiko, went to Mape. You went to Telecom. I don't know if that was the best place for either you or I at that time.
I suspect
and
not.
then you went to, the Belgian teams, Davide Lotto and Silence Lotto, before ending your career with 6 or 5
years
6
at
years at BMC.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, from your experience, changing teams, what that means to the rider, and what sort of little pitfalls you may have to navigate?
Yeah, I think, and I'd be interested in your opinion, especially when you went to CSC with Bjarne Riis. There was a turnaround in your career, for the better. What I think, for the most part, personally, I was always motivated for a new environment. Like, I was changing teams normally for a reason. I normally changed teams because I wanted to. It was my choice, not being forced out of a team or something. So it was sort of like, anywhere will be better than here, so I'm going to change. And I was always really motivated, and also motivated. One thing I always say this to young riders who are starting out: be primed and ready from the first race, because that's where you sort of set the bar. And you go to the first race, and if you win a stage of, Tour Down Under or the My Great Ocean Road Race or something, that's where you really win respect from the staff, your teammates, the riders, management, everyone. So get the ball rolling well. But also, you don't just, sometimes you don't have a choice of teams, but if you have a choice of teams, you make the choice based on opportunity or something, or this is a better environment to work in. And so in my career, it was always a step for the better. It was strange when I was at Lotto, but there I left a year before my contract ran out. Actually, I had to pay myself out of my contract and things, but I just wanted to get out of that team because it just not working for me. But then I was going from the World Tour to the Pro Conti team, which was kind of unusual, really. But in the end, it's the BMC racing team was a team on a huge growth curve, on a great positive growth curve, and it was great timing for me, and one of the best career decisions I ever made. But I'm interested for you to go from Telecom to CSC. What was it? Was it called CSC then? The first year you moved?
Yeah.
With Bjarne, it was like, that's not the Bobby Julich I know. He was like you had two extra legs to ride with.
Yeah. I'm glad this came up. It wasn't really planned, but when you sign your contract for your first team, right? You're over the moon. You're like, I'm a pro. I've made it. And then when those options come up, it can't be just financial, right? You got to think about the team environment, your teammates. I mean, you just rattled off your whole 2011 BMC racing team, Tour de France team, right? You remember their names, right? Because you guys were brothers. You guys were family.
Yeah, we're still family now, yeah.
Yeah. And, it was hard being an American on French teams. It was hard then going to a German team. Like, I was always chasing something that perfection that you're like me. I'm like you, Cadel. Like, we think about the minutia. We think about the little things. For me, at least, I could have 99 things out of 100 lined up going perfectly, and I could only think about that one thing that I didn't have, right? So that was always I was too much inside my own head on those French teams, and especially the German team that I was teammates with you on.
And
it's funny that
any of the athletes you're coaching, that's a great mentality. Sorry, go on.
So you being Australian, me being American, we both rode for German Team Telecom. And this cat right here, one of the best German riders of all time, never rode for Telecom. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. Kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. But I had no options after 2003 World Championships up in Hamilton, right? I was 5 years removed from the Tour de France podium. I could not get out of my own way. I was a mental milkshake. And how I tell people how I was operating was that I was driving around in my car with the parking brake up, right? So I was able to go, but I wasn't able to go anywhere efficiently. As soon as I went to CSC, the first hour of the first team meeting that we had there, where Bjarne just set the tone for the team and the vision of the team, I felt that parking brake go all the way to the floor. And it was freedom, and it was fun, and I'm still best friends with most of the guys that are on that team. That's what makes cycling so much fun. And that's what I see with Tadej Pogačar. He seems to have that enjoyment, that real, his teammates are amazing, but like, he is the leader and he has a smile on his face. I had a smile on my face in 2004, 2005 until I crashed out of the tour in 2006, which was my last tour. But yeah, there's a lot more than the contract. Right? It's if you get paid, $1 million to go to this team or 1.2 to go to that team, you need to find what makes you happy around good people. And I love what you said about making those connections with staff. The riders kind of know who's getting paid what, so the pecking order is kind of already done. But when it comes to the staff, which is a monumental part of your happiness on a team, if you make that first good impression on them and you show that you're not just a jerk or a little prima donna, that's going to go a long way. So that team dynamic that Ben is going to have to, I guess, curate himself, and especially Demi going to the Française des Jeux women's team, that's my advice, is to go in there with no ego, get your work done, be professional, have fun, and really get that whole team around you.
Yep. And also, when you go in as a leader, I think a big thing is like, go to the first race and like, the race plan gets in, but then also put your hand up as like, I'm not going any good. Anyone's going good. I'll ride on the front, whatever needs to be done. Also, just straight away being honest about that as well, because even if you go there as a leader, you also go there with expectations. But it's also, when you do have those expectations for the whole season, it's kind of nice to go to the first race of the year and ride on the front for someone who never gets a chance to lead a race or something. And it also sets the tone, like you say. And I think there's one thing setting the tone, but then there's going out and doing. Oscar Freire taught me this when I was with him at Mapei. There's one thing saying, but when they go out and do it, you're just convinced. Two things, if I can just touch on what you say, Bobby. I can relate to you with that riding around with the handbrake on. I used the same I was in exactly the same situation, and I used exactly the same metaphor. And something happened. I had a meeting or whatever, and the handbrake was released, and the next day was the World Championships in 2009 in Mendrisio. To cut a long story short. And the Tadej, one thing that's so remarkable, obviously he's amazingly talented, he's a very good bike handler, he seems to have a lot of luck, but he can just stay so relaxed and enjoy it. If I relaxed and enjoyed it and laughed like that, something went wrong. I'd be in a crash, or I'd be like, in psychology they call it under aroused. You're not at your best because you're not in your peak condition. Because I needed to be a little bit nervous and stressed. I had to calm myself down to perform well, but I couldn't. I could also relax too much if I just laughed around and looked around like Tadej does in the bunch.
I agree. When I had a job, I mean, there will be a few stages where I wouldn't have a job. I mean, I was never a GC rider. You could relax a little, but when you have a job, when we plan a big attack with Cancellara or the Schleck brothers, I even went to my German friends, look, I can't talk. I'm focused. Sorry, I just need my head in the game, and I cannot talk and throw jokes because we got a big day ahead. So you both have been leaders, and Demi Vollering changing teams, also Ben O'Connor. How much of a say does the new leader has on a brand new team about the Tour de France team? Not the entire team, but the team, the men and women, they go within the Tour de France, and you're new in the team. How did you guys handle that in your past?
I think just also related to what you were saying, Bobby, I think Ben's got a easier transition to make because he's going from a French team to an Aussie team, whereas Demi's going in opposite direction. I've never raced in a French team myself, so I don't know the culture very well, but I don't know how that will go. If I can say just about the Tour de France selection, especially my years with BMC and Jim Okowicz, where it was obvious that I was going to be the guy for GC. Yeah, I got to have a fair bit of input into the selection of the team, but it's never up to one person in the selection. In most of the teams that I've been in, it's sort of a collaboration, and it's kind of like a vote of 4 or 5 people, whether it's the coach and 4 directors, and maybe my input as well would be not quite included in that vote, but maybe influence the votes of others, maybe directors or something in my own thing. But also that comes so you go to the team presentation and okay, there's no team time trial, so if there are 8 riders, maybe you had 10 in mind and no team time trial, well it won't be him, it'll be him. That like at this point today there might be some leaders thinking that.
Yeah, I can't really I have nothing to say there, because when I was a leader on Cofidis and then Credit Agricole, things were not going right up here for me. So I had no pull, no say in the Tour de France selection. But nowadays it seems like you get that little band of brothers, and those guys are the long team, and they can. Not many people can ride themselves into the team, but maybe a couple guys ride themselves out of the team or get injured. But it is such a stressful time, not only as a rider, as a team leader, but also as a coach and in middle management, when it boils down to that final selection. We used to have 9 riders in the Tour. Now we only have 8, so that even makes it more difficult. You got 30 guys on the team, only 8 get to go to the Tour de France. Every single one of them want to go to the Tour de France. So it's an incredibly stressful time that we have, 250 days to talk about between now and the start of the Tour de France 2025. But I do want to ask you something about the Tour de France next year, Cadel. Mont Ventoux. you've had great days on Mont Ventoux when you won in Paris-Nice, and you've had some average days, to say the least, on Mont Ventoux. I have never had a good day on Mont Ventoux. To me, it's my least favorite climb on the planet. What is your opinion of Mont Ventoux, and why is it such an absolute classic climb used in the Tour?
I'm going to be rational about this as well. People always ask, "What's your favourite climb?" And I'm like, any climb that I'm winning on is my favourite climb. Any climb that I'm not winning on or getting dropped on, especially when I have to be there for GC or I'm not, is not my favourite climb. And if you're okay on Alpe d'Huez, it's okay. Alpe d'Huez was a bit the same for me. It was also famous, but I never had like a great day there. And then Ventoux in the Tour. Outside of the Tour, I normally had good days there, but in the Tour, something always went wrong. And so it was sort of a bit, for me, it was a bit, whenever we went there, I was always, and the last time we went there, Astana split the field in a crosswind, way before the start of the climb, and they rode it to the bottom. It was like, can't remember what year now, but 2012 maybe, and yeah, that was I suppose that was probably my last race on Mont Ventoux, and I'm like, I've been back a couple of times just as a tourist, and that it's just been fantastic to ride up. But I'm just very, if I'm having a good day on a climb, it's a good climb. If I'm having a bad day, well, that's bad. I don't like that climb on that day, that's for sure. I think one thing, this was Neil Stevens said this to me years ago about like what makes, say, Alpe d'Huez famous. It's not that Alpe d'Huez is particularly hard or anything, but because it's in the middle of the Alps, you've always got to go over heaps of mountains to get there. So what happens on Alpe d'Huez is always very dramatic. And I think Ventoux is dramatic for its openness, its wind, its barrenness. Like just to watch it, it looks pretty imposing, doesn't it? And then of course like the Chris Froome running up there without a bike, and those kind of days make it just add to that awe I think we all have about Ventoux.
Well, since we already talked about memories, do you have any particular moment in your entire Tour de France history that sticks out to you? Very likely it's your winning days, or is there like anything you go, wow, that day was just amazing, and like, or you go, nah, they're just all in the tunnel of pain behind me?
I suppose I have had moments. I'm not one for when people think about the climbs and all the name. I had to look up Montepana today, like a stage finish that I visited in the Giro this year. But town names, those things, I didn't remember any of them. Of course, the names of the big climbs I remember, but someone asked me today, someone in the family, have you rode Passo Fedaya? I'm going for a ride tomorrow and I could ride there, but I can't remember. But all the gradients and the entrances, narrow road, wide road, off-camber corner, good off-camber corner, good headwind up the valley or something like that. All those things I remember, but things like names and that I don't remember. But certainly moments and experiences really struck strongly in my mind about the Tour, and especially you go back and you write books and you give like talks to groups and things about everyone after my 2011 tour. Everyone wanted to hear what was going through my head in like the stage to the Galibier, where I was chasing down Andy, trying to close the gap to Andy. And so of course I've relived that moment so many times, it's kind of etched quite heavily in my brain. But yes, when I start thinking back to it, I have a lot of really vivid memories. And I think one thing you, as a rider, especially if you're in the press and on TV, you're being asked, you're sort of reviewing your experience so many times, and if you had a good time, you're not just reviewing it after each stage in the interviews and the TV, but you're reviewing it, doing corporate talks in the off-season in Australia for me, writing books, and you're just going reviewing and reviewing, which is just, of course, reinforcing your memory of all those experiences. So a lot of mine are really vividly etched in my mind. But I still have to, when I was writing a book, I had to look up on Wikipedia and things for who was one place in front of me in the breakaway, or what was the name of that town. I spent a lot of time looking on maps and Google Maps looking for town names and things.
Going back to the Mark Cavendish, is he going to race? Is he not going to race? We kind of had the same question about you, Cadel. Like you won the Tour de France in 2011, In 2012, you get 7th place. 2013, you
30s, no
you
way.
did a little bit less than that. I think you were top 30, top 40. But then in 2014, your last full season, you didn't even do the Tour de France. You did the Giro and the Vuelta, right? And then
they wanted
question, is Cadel going to race the next year? And you get 3rd in the Tour Down Under. And I think I have it here in my notes somewhere. I think it was
was my inaugural
fifth in the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race, and then
not the 5th place,
and then stopped.
Yep.
Was that planned? Did you want to? Yeah. Were you? I mean, when you get 3rd in the Tour Down Under and 5th or whatever in your race, wasn't there some itch to say, "Hey, man, I still got it"?
No, I'm still happy today that I'm like, if anyone asked me about my career or whatever, the day I retired, I was ranked 3rd in the world, because there'd only been one World Tour race, but that sort of stays, I suppose, forever. But I had illness in 2012 that wasn't discovered until after the Tour de France. I was racing with this virus actually for the whole year there, but that really. Not only mentally, but my relationship with the team and my teammates really rattled things. Then 2013, the team wanted me, but they came very late into the plan. They came and saw me the day before Milan-San Remo and said, "Oh, you should ride the Giro to get ready for the Tour." And I'm like, "It's March." I think I went home that night and looked at the Giro stages on the internet just to know where it went, because of course I was getting ready for the Tour, so I hadn't paid much attention to the Giro. But then they didn't want me to ride the Tour. They wanted me to try and do something at the Giro, because I thought I might be able to do something in Giro, but I definitely can't do anything at the Tour. And this was probably Jim Ockwick's choice, I'd say, with recommendations from people within the team. But I was okay with that. I wasn't I was always fixated in the Tour de France in my career, but I always actually wanted to ride the Giro, so for me that worked out well. But then I did actually want to continue after that. And this is a thing between Jim Ockwick and I, where I remember earlier when I first joined the team, he said to me, we were talking about retirement or riders or something. He looked me in the eye and he said, "When you need to retire, I'll tell you." And so I've gone to him in 2014 and said, "Oh yeah, I'd like to ride another 2 years and this." And he looked at me and said, "There's not a place for you on this team. You should retire." And it wasn't what I wanted to hear at all, right? Totally not what I wanted to hear at all. And then, so I'm like, because I wanted to keep racing, but it wasn't for the right reasons. So I asked, "Can I just do the month in Australia, because it's the first edition of my own race, which I'd been working on for some 2 years or so more to get going and get everything going." And my thing was, "Well, Jim, I'm going to train like there's no tomorrow, because I'm only going to do 1 month of racing, and it's going to be in Australia, and I'm going to do everything I can to do the best that I can." And with the way the points worked out and everything, it worked out really well for them. And Rowan Dennis was my teammate, and it was actually the fact that I was there on GC and he won Tour Down Under. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to do that without me being there. But it was a couple of months later actually, and I was going somewhere with Jim Ockwick again, and I actually thanked him. I said, "Thanks, Jim, for saying that, because I needed to be told that, and no one else could have said that to me." So I didn't want to stop, but I was forced to stop, but it was the right thing to do, and I did my last race. And I always had this thing in my career, was always to become a professional cyclist was, for me, it was I always saw it as a fantastic opportunity. It was a dream come true, an opportunity to make a living racing my bike, which is all I wanted to do anyway. And so I always looked at it as this window of opportunity to make the most of, and that motivated me a lot in my training and everything that I was doing. But knowing that this window of opportunity would close one day, and that window of opportunity closed on the finish line of my own race, the Great Ocean Road Race in February 2014. But I have to say, I crossed the finish line that day, cramping, and okay, I wasn't happy with the result. Like so often, I was not happy with the result that I got in a race. But I thought, okay, I gave it everything. Now it's time for the next chapter.
Next chapter. That is actually a good way to go across to my next question. There's any more few new chapters in your life? Any new jobs coming up for this year, for next year?
Yeah, I'm moving my family back to Australia, which has been it's only 26 years I've been based in Europe actually. So I'm not going to know myself in Australia, but that's in my personal life a big thing. I did get married this year as well. I'll be working more on my race, the Great Ocean Road Race in Australia, doing more things in Australia, of course, obviously being based there. But it's been an interesting thing that I have started up with Moo cycling and the tours, and particularly being I was nearly going to go to the Tour de France presentation today for this. But I have to say, it's been really nice. The first group that I hosted was at the Giro d'Italia, and we were staying in Como. And because I live 25 kilometres, or I'm based 25 kilometres from Como, I've got like a story to tell about nearly every corner of every street in Como. But to be able to share that with my own, especially Australians, but other Anglophones, share my experiences of being in Europe, whether it's racing or outside racing, culinary desires, politics or whatever, anything that I've learned about this time here, it's just been a really nice way to sort of be at the races, enjoy the races, but be able to share it with other people. And we had we were riding up the Tourmalet in July this year, and we had this guest. He was an awesome guy from Adelaide, and he just stopped and took a photo on like nearly every switchback. But he just loved every metre of the climb, every metre of every ride we did. It's pouring rain, it's all foggy. Like, this is fantastic. It just completely reinvigorated my passion and appreciation for riding at least in France. In this case, in the Pyrenees, it was a really, really great experience. And that's so I look forward to doing that again. I'm coming back for the Giro, maybe some of the Ardennes Classics next year, and the tour as well with Australians, Anglophones for the most part, and that's been a great new experience. But of course, since stepping away from being a rider, I think it's been fantastic. I've gone into race organisation, the bike industry with BMC, then going back to the races as a host with a tour company, and I'm just so there you're more a fan as a spectator as well. It's really been a nice, other than being just so concentrated on everything within the barriers, now I've been involved in sort of everything outside of the barriers, which has just been a great learning experience, and really, really enjoyable. It's nearly 10 years now, 10 years next year.
So next year's Tour de France, I will see you and my old friend Stuart O'Grady with Moo Cycling in the first week of the Tour de France, because I'm going to be there for Eurosport on a motorbike, and then we're going to have a coffee together in a village départ. Talking the Tour de France, my very last questions for you, Cadel. Who is your favorite? And if it's Pogačar, what does Remco and Jonas need to do to challenge him? Attack earlier, attack later.
Who my favourite... Well, I suppose my favourite tour guy probably was actually Roglic. I just like the guy, met him, know him personally. I don't know personally Vingegaard, I don't know personally Pog, I don't know personally Evenepoel either. But I think Pog is just incredible in this talent. What he's doing is just absolutely incredible, amazing. I'm in awe of his talent, but I think I sort of those three, I probably in terms of a fan, I'm probably more an Evenepoel guy, to be honest. He's sort of just the quiet achiever. He just goes around and he's just very calculating. I think he's also a very well-rounded rider, and he's really gone beyond what I don't know why. I just seem to like him as a rider, just a little bit more. With all respect, because obviously Vingegaard and Pogačar, they're not just the best riders at the moment. They're maybe the best Grand Tour riders for at least decades, if not generations and generations before them. So, but we're in this period. I'm glad I'm a spectator and a fan now, rather than a rider.
Cadel, thanks for sharing your insights and thoughts with us. Thanks a million for being our guest today on The Odd Tandem with Bobby and me. It was absolutely fantastic to catch up with you, and maybe getting closer to next year's Tour de France, we might invite you back for another update on your experience of that. Thanks again one more time for being our guest tonight.
Thanks, Cadel. Jens. Thanks, Bobby. Absolute pleasure to be here, and odd tandem. It is a bit of an odd tandem. Hope I can be back with you sometime soon. Thanks, guys.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast. There will be loads more content popping up here, including more great interviews with top guests like Cadel. And please keep dropping your questions for us in the comments. And check our description below to find us on social media and Patreon to support the channel, like these great people.